Welcome, everybody. Hare Krishna, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holidays, Happy upcoming New Year. Welcome to everybody. It is December 27th, 2022. Starlog, we are here. We made it. This is Spirit Matters. You're not so daily in the past week, Bhakti Center podcast. We've been on break for like a little over a week. Doing some traveling, some people getting sick. But we're back, and it's Kishore and I are here today. This is Dalgranga with Kishore Chandra. Chittagopi is out. Looks like she's got like strep throat or something serious with the throat going on. Can't speak, in pain, not able to join us. So it's just us. And we're glad to be here with you. We haven't been here in a little bit. We were just like pre-podcast, like, what is this podcast about? What do we do here? What are we talking about? Why are we on? Why are we here? How are you doing, Kishore?
I'm doing okay. I feel like I was a little sick for a few days. Not as bad as the Chuta, but just it's really rough here in New York. Like it got really cold. I like didn't leave my apartment for 3 days. I'm not going outside. I'm not going outside. It's too cold.
on
And
the camera, it looks like you're like in a spaceship in NASA, like out in deep space, being like, Starlog, I haven't had human contact in many days, in many months. It's cold out here in space. I'm not doing well. Please send backup.
but yesterday I left my apartment for the first day in 3 days. And it was really nice. I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy that we got back on today. Yeah.
I was in California. I left on Sunday, Christmas Day. I left on Christmas Day. It was 80 degrees when I left. And it was 20 degrees when I landed.
80 degrees in California?
Yeah, it peaked at 80. It was in the 60s and 70s the whole trip, and it was in the 70s, and it peaked at 80 on that day. 80 degrees.
No.
And then I landed. It was like I was watching the news. It was like storm alert, hyper bomb, storm, winter bomb, storm, 7 degrees in Texas and freezing degrees in Florida. And I was like, it's hot. It's hot where I was. California.
Apparently, like upstate New York, like Buffalo got like 48 inches of snow or something. Like it snowed up there. Like it was crazy.
It was cold in Texas. It was cold in
cold in Florida. Someone told me
Florida.
Someone told me yesterday that in Florida it was like 34 degrees or something like that. I was like, oh, that's bad. I guess they can complain. Like, I guess
for Florida. I mean, it's bad for Florida. I mean, if it was 34 degrees here, I'd be happy.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. 23 this morning in northern Florida. God bless. God bless. Well, we're here to warm up your day with some love.
Oh, Krishna.
Oh, goodness. I did something when I was in California, Rasika and I, because my wife loves Christmas music. And so we have a Christmas tree in our house, and we listen to the holiday cheer. And so we just turn on, like around Christmas, you can just turn on the radio. Although most in California, they don't get it. Like you turn on, it's like Christmas Day, Christmas morning, we're going over to see like my sister's house, and turn on the radio, and they got like classic rock playing at like 8 a.m. and Christmas morning. I was like, what's going on with these radios? But anyways, we were listening to the radio sometimes, and they were playing like playbacks, and they were also like, I had like morning talk shows, and I was like, this is what people used to listen to before podcasts. People just talking on the radio. People just like listening to people talk.
It's comforting.
It's comforting. So anyways, I hope you're comforting if you're still listening to us. We're going to talk. That's what we're going to do. We got 22 minutes left.
Christmas.
Sydney said you got married on Christmas Eve morning, like 2 days ago, Christmas Eve morning.
No, I think, well, actually, I don't know.
I don't know.
Yes, I did. Me and Brian got married.
Oh, what?
Well, congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'll share pictures to the our little WhatsApp group later.
Okay. We have a little WhatsApp group for all of you listening out there in podcast land. We also have a live Zoom audience that has the ability to unmute themselves at will.
True. For some reason, I thought Sydney meant like it was my
My
anniversary.
anniversary. She's like, nope, I got married
I
2
got
days
married
ago.
2 days ago.
Yeah. What did you do on Christmas? Huh?
I was on my couch.
Okay. Oh, well, I was getting stuff done. I was doing sacraments. We love you, Sydney. And we love you, Brian. It was Brian, right?
Brian. Yeah, Brian.
It's like, no, it didn't work out with Brian.
That's amazing.
All right. Well, congratulations. We love you guys. Lots of activity going on. We reread the Bhagavad Gita here, just so you don't have to listen to us speak randomly. We read the Bhagavad Gita as a little daily dose of spiritual wisdom, and we've been reading the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, entitled Karma Yoga, about acting intelligently in this world in a way that is aligned with our spiritual nature. And we left off, the scorecard says 319. Reads, therefore, I'm going to read the verse and then maybe we'll take a moment to like contextualize and reframe where we are. Therefore, without being attached to the fruits of activities, one should act as a matter of duty. For by working without attachment, one attains the supreme. I'm going to read it again. Therefore, without being attached to the fruits of activities, i.e., the outcomes, i.e., the results, one should act as a matter of duty, i.e., do the right thing. For by working without attachment, one attains the supreme, capital S. Do you want to do the contextualizing or do you want me to do it?
I can try my best.
Okay, great.
I can try my best. I'm still a little like, what's happening? What's going on? But I will try my
what's
best.
What's a Gita?
So in chapter 3 in general, we have to remember and contextualize, and this is a nice place to contextualize that, to remember that Krishna and Arjuna are on a battlefield, and Arjuna doesn't want to fight this battle, this war, and the main reason being that he's giving a lot of, even though he already knew what he was getting himself into, even though internally and morally he knew it was the right thing to do, but upon seeing people on the other side of the battlefield that were family members and friends, he had an about face. So this is a nice part to remember that, because this chapter specifically, the beginning of this chapter, is talking about action and talking about how one must act in the world. And that actually there's sometimes this false pretense or this misconceived notion that spirituality is equivalent to just not acting, or spirituality is equivalent to just like, I'm just going to go to a cave and be a monk and just like not engage with the world. And Krishna is actually telling Arjuna, actually, that's not true. Actually, at the beginning of chapter 3, he says, everyone is forced to act according to their nature. Everyone is forced to act according to their nature, and you're going to act no matter what. And so throughout the beginning of chapter 3, Krishna is explaining to Arjuna kind of like the nature of action. And this is the part that I miss, but it's a part that I really like. He starts to explain to him kind of the principle of sacrifice, of doing something, but also not expecting something in return. And this being kind of the perfection of action, right? So doing something, acting in a certain way, but not being attached to the results. And then simultaneously understanding kind of like this ring that exists around action, that like we're all living on this earth based on the actions that we do with nature, with, these verses are talking about the demigods who rule over nature. And so like there's a lot of what they call yajna, or sacrifice, or giving to receive, right? So it's a reciprocal relationship. And I think that this verse that we just read, verse 19, is a little bit of a sum up of that. Because once again, Krishna is saying here that without being attached to the fruits of the activities. So I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it with my full heart, with my full awareness and consciousness, but I'm not going to be attached to the fruits of the activities. And rather, this word duty comes up, and that's being spoken of a lot here. One should act as a matter of duty, for by working without attachment, one attains the supreme. And the last thing I'll say before I end this sum up is in the purport, something really interesting that Srila Prabhupada says is that, and this is a nice talking point. The purport says there's this one line where Srila Prabhupada says, to be a, I'm gonna air quote for those that can't see me on the who are listening to the recording, to be a good man, that's in air quotes, or a non-violent man is a personal attachment. I think that's a really interesting statement. I'll read it again. To be a good man or a non-violent man is a personal attachment. But to act on behalf of the Supreme is to act without attachment for the result. And that is the perfect action of the highest degree, recommended by Krishna. And so just to put that into a little bit more context, I'll read the next paragraph of what that means. So it says, Vedic rituals, like prescribed sacrifices, are performed for purification of impious activities that were performed in the field of sense gratification. But action in Krishna consciousness is transcendental to the reactions of good or evil work. A Krishna conscious person has no attachment for the result, but acts on behalf of Krishna alone. And this is the kicker. He engages in all kinds of activities, but is completely non-attached. So it's kind of challenging our ideas of good and bad a little bit, because sometimes if you superficially look at what's happening in the Gita, you're like, yeah, what Arjuna is saying makes sense. He doesn't want to fight his family, and he's giving all these great reasons at the end of chapter 1. But Krishna's getting a little bit more into the subtleties of it. And it's like, actually, like this whole notion of like good and bad and what's prescribed by society versus not is, you know, there's something beyond that. And that's what he's explaining here.
That was good context. Thank you. I just, as you were speaking, part of me was just thinking, well, there's this sense of not being attached to outcomes and being in control and feeling like I have control over the way things go or the way people look at me or think of me. Like this idea to be a good man or a nonviolent man is a personal attachment. Personal attachment is like, I like the reputation of being a certain way, of people thinking of me, a philanthropic or a kind. I like it when people think that I like being kind because I like the way that it feels just to be good to other people. But I also like it when people see me being good to other people, when people see me being quote unquote spiritual.
No, I don't know what you did.
We had to mute it, an unmuted, a rogue unmuter. People see me as being good, or people perceive me in a certain way. And I think learning to let that go, and ultimately learning to that when we live our life, we're not always going to be seen the way that we want to be seen, and we're not always going to be perceived the way that we want to be perceived. And when we allow that to dictate or to drive our decisions or how we live, we're not going to end up in a very fulfilling place. So that's my little takeaway.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. Like, we're not going to end up in a fulfilling place if that's what we're attached to, the way that people view us. And I think it really, you know, just this idea of good and evil or good and bad or whatever is so interesting, because at the end of chapter 1, it seemed like that was that was one of Arjuna's concerns, you know, of fighting the war. It's like, oh, how, you know, one of the arguments that he gave was what a lot of them were like moralizing, or like how society was gonna fall apart because of his actions. And, you know, he prescribed so much undue importance to like what he thought was right or what was wrong. And sometimes people get stuck in that. myself included, of like, this is what's quote unquote good, or this is what's quote unquote bad. And that can be really dangerous, I think, because, we live in a society, unfortunately, now in present day, where there's some people who think that they're really right, like they are really right. And if you're not right with them, and if you don't agree with them, then that means you're evil and that you're wrong and that you should, like, I don't know, go to hell or something, right? And it's just like this constant back and forth of just like, no, actually we're right and you're wrong. No, actually this is what's good and this is, and it's almost like there's no space for that, for the subtleties or the nuances. There's no space for that kind of like mystery that we've talked about a little bit, like when you're getting into this Krishna consciousness, and when you're getting into like, let me see what Krishna thinks about all this, like you'll notice that there are sometimes contradictions, sometimes inconsistencies, sometimes things that are inexplicable by a logical, our logical mind, and we need to kind of just like release the logos a little bit. We need to like release, like, actually, you know what, I'm not going to rationalize this out. I just have to accept that this is the pastime that Krishna did, and that, like, yeah, like I'm accepting this, I'm surrendering to this, and I'm feeling it, as opposed to it doesn't make sense, so that means it's wrong, and you're wrong. And so I think there can be a lot to learn from that, or at least a beginning place to asking questions of like, why do I believe what is good is good? It's a good question to ask yourself. Why do I believe what is bad is bad? A lot of the times we go around internally judging other people of like, oh, I can't believe they did that, or like, look at them go over there doing that thing, which is wrong, and it's like, we don't know their life, we don't know their context, we don't know what's happening, we don't know anything, And so I think these boxes that we sometimes put other people in, or we put ourselves in, is really dangerous. And Krishna's kind of like asking us, like, you need to kind of transcend all of that a little bit, because what we're talking about here is beyond those things.
And I appreciate that in the context, as I was thinking about it in the context of spiritual practice, of that the cleansing the mirror of the mind in order to gain perspective. That, when we look at the world through a very filtered lens, through a very tainted lens of our own experience, of our own upbringing, of our own judgments, and we allow that to taint the way that we view other people in the world, in terms of what we think is good, what we think is bad, what we think is appropriate or not. And that becomes our world, that becomes our reality. And what I think Krishna consciousness and spirituality is calling us to do is to invite us to at least ponder the idea that there are other perspectives, or that my perspective can be broadened, or that the lens through which I'm looking at at life can be polished a bit. And our spiritual practice, because spiritual practice also, because what was coming up for me a little bit about this idea of detachment or letting go of things, is also the idea that spiritual life isn't always sexy. It doesn't always feel like, like it should in a movie, with like, okay, I'm going to sit down to do my meditation. There's this background music going on, and there's like a butterfly is going to come and land on my lap, and like, I'm going to wake up and all of a sudden, like, everything's going to click in my life today. It's like, it's just like, I don't know, maybe it's not. It's like it doesn't always, and it's every day. Every day. Like the first day, it's like, oh wow, I got my beads, I got my special bead bag, I got my clothes, I got my special pants, I got my special cushion, and it's like, and you take it out of the box, and it's like it's exciting, and it also it's just a feeling of something new. But when you do something every day, there's going to be the feelings of it being exciting and feelings of it feeling stale. And when we let go of the results of even our spiritual practice, we start to commit ourselves to what is known as sadhana, which is like a steady daily practice, however big or small or grand it may or may not be. But the idea of like, I'm not here to just like, I'm not only here to experience like peace and bliss all the time. I'm not only here because I'm trying to like squeeze some experience like a lucky rabbit foot, you know, or like a spiritual Advil to make all my sorrows go away. But it's actually like it's like a polishing of a window. It's like a polishing of a mirror of a diamond. It's like a wiping away of a very dirty mirror or a pair of glasses so that I can start to look at the world and see things with a little bit more clarity rather than just the lens of my 38-year-old, American male, Republican, Democrat, Latino, African, Asian, Southern, like whatever lens I might be, pulling over my eyes or have been given to me. And so I think that yes, for us to step back and say, there are other perspectives. I'm looking at things from a very filtered lens. And the reason I practice spiritual life, one of the reasons I practice spiritual life is because I want to refine the lens through which I look at things,
Yes, I
So
agree.
do your spiritual practice, kids.
Do your spiritual practice. And I think just something small I'll say here is I think that's really one in the yoga system, in the kind of like Ashtanga yoga system, I've been like, this concept has been on my mind. I don't know, it feels very like physical and real to me, but like there's this idea of the koshas, of like the different levels of the body, or the different sheaths of the body. And in yoga in general, it looks at the mind as very as separate from the soul, that the mind is a tool, it's a material thing. The mind and the emotions are a tool and a material thing. And in this idea of the koshas, and even here in Bhagavad Gita, I'll make the link in a second, in the koshas it talks about the Vijnanamaya kosha, or like the wisdom body, or like that part of you that is beyond the mind. And in Bhagavad Gita, it's also speaking of the buddhi, or like the higher intelligence, or the higher awareness. And that is that side of you that's kind of able to like see those things that you were just mentioning, Doya. Like there are other perspectives. I am conditioned by my, place and name and upbringing and body and sex and this and like whatever, all this stuff. And can I take a step back from all of that? Can I commune with this higher side of me, or this higher consciousness, higher awareness, whatever, wisdom, whatever you want to call it, and start to live in that? And I think that's, at least for me personally, that's been a big kind of like litmus test of my, like, how am I doing? Like, how am I doing on my spiritual path? Because especially when there's conflict, or when there's like old things coming up, whether they be triggers or traumas or anxieties or frustrations or whatever it is that you're going through, like you'll notice like the reaction comes up of like your conditionings and how you deal with things, and the stories that we tell ourselves and the narratives and whatever. And it's almost like all the way in the back of somewhere, it's like there's that part of you that's like, but there's another way of looking at this, like there's other perspectives. It doesn't need to go this way that we're always used to doing things. And so for myself personally, I always check in with myself, like, okay, can I kind of zoom out? Can I be the witness? Can I, be in a place of deeper awareness around this thing in my life that is happening, or around this issue, as opposed to falling into my usual kind of like mental, emotional, just like ruts, And I think that's really nice and important. It has really helped me to make that separation of like, this is my mind and this is my emotions, and I can step away from that. I'm understanding that I am those things, and that I can visit those things when I want. That's been really powerful for me. Like I can visit those identities. I can visit those parts of me, whatever, Latino man, gay, this, New Yorker, I can visit those aspects of me. I can utilize them in my pursuits if I need to, I can be the loud New Yorker when I need to be the loud New Yorker, but that doesn't define who I am. That's not who I am. It's a part of me. It's a conditioned part of me. And I have a little bit of distance from that, so it doesn't take over me in those moments of like, in those moments of rub, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And I think that it's something we always want to hear when we're experiencing something challenging or frustrating. But the reality is that, you know, the way I'm seeing and experiencing things right now isn't necessarily the ultimate reality. You know, the way I'm seeing and experiencing this or viewing this or interpreting this and the response that my mind is coming up with isn't the only, there are other ways of looking at this, and there are other ways of responding to this. And I think that that is something that could always come in handy. Like, doesn't mean that we have to enter with the assumption that we're wrong, but it's just like, that's one way of experiencing it. That's one way of looking at it. What would be another way of experiencing or looking at this? So what would be another potential alternate explanation or an alternate way of responding? Or that's the way that part of me is going to respond to the situation. That is the way that my angered self or my intimidated self or my scared self or my aggravated self or my that is that self responding to this, the part that's identifying with such and such. But what about the other parts of me that might be able to respond differently? Are we able to, what would it look like for me to regroup and separate and view differently and respond differently? Dana said in the chat, instead of asking why, ask what can I do instead? How can I choose peace instead of quote unquote this? And it's a practice. I think that we're going to fail at it. Right? It really is a muscle. It really is a muscle. It's not something that you just like do and don't do. It's not like a power pack that you just put on your back and now you're able to do it. It's like, it's a muscle that you have to flex and to grow and to exercise and to develop over time. And you give it, you try it and it hurts, or it doesn't go well, or you wobble, or you flounder. But then it's like through time, there's a muscle memory. There's a spiritual muscle memory that we develop by continuously trying something, you know, forgiveness, tolerance, compassion, empathy, understanding, broader perspective. Like those are things that we cultivate. And there's just a choice that I want to move in that direction. And so it's not just like all of a sudden I become all of those things, but I want to move in that direction. Why? Because I want a better quality of life. I don't want to, I've seen the results of what it looks like to live the way that I'm living now. And I want to move into, and I also want to just understand beyond my limited scope of just my own little world. I want to be able to experience more. And so we want to move in that direction, and it's practice. And that's why we're here. We're just practicing one little bit at a time. And our dear Wrap It Up Acharya, Kimberly, is on a road trip right now. So she's not able to wrap things up for us today. So if anybody's got any takeaways that they've been hearing or mining in their hearts and their minds, please type them in the chat so we can read them out. Otherwise, we will wrap it up ourselves. In our Zoom chat, Bald Davy said, we'll goof that, but eventually can master it sooner than later if we really offer compassion and drop judgment every moment. Dana K, it's a practice of Krishna consciousness. My takeaway is spiritual life doesn't always feel sexy. We allowed to say that? This is a family show. That's okay. Yes, it's allowed to say that. And so I've been thinking about that. Like, oh, I don't feel like it. Well, and I'm not saying like ignore your feelings or don't blah blah blah. But there is an element to life of like, you don't just do whatever you feel like in every moment. Like there is an element of like, yeah, I don't feel like doing it, but I'm going to do it anyways because I'm going to just day after day commit myself to something. And yes, if something is just like draining your soul and like day after day and like, yeah, pay attention to that, talk to somebody, regroup, recalibrate. But if like every day it's just like, oh, I don't feel like eating that, I don't feel like doing that. It's just like, I'm never going to be able to direct the river flow of my life in a particular way. And there is a sense of just like, yeah, but I'm committing myself to something because I see a higher purpose.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. Spiritual life definitely is not sexy sometimes.
Ever, never. It never feels good. It's always a grind. If you're happy, you're doing something wrong.
I
Wait,
think
no, wait, that's not the message. I think I read the wrong script. Oopsies.
I think my takeaway today is just this idea of getting out of the construct or getting out of the misconceived notion that like I'm gonna be good at like the whole idea of like I'm gonna be great at spirituality. I'm gonna get 100 on the spirituality test that they're giving me to me. Look at me, I'm a straight A student on spirituality, course. It's like we're gonna go up and we're gonna go down, and things are gonna be rough and things are gonna be good, and we're gonna feel inspired some days and sexy and like, oh wow, this is so cool. And other days we're gonna feel like, wow, this is really tough and this is really making me go in a lot and etc. And I guess my takeaway is really like the litmus test for my spiritual practice has to be bigger and wider than just like, is it good or is it bad? Do I feel great or do I feel bad? It needs to be something beyond that. It needs to be something deeper and more nuanced than that. And at least for me right now, I think like, is this bringing me closer to Krishna? Is this bringing me closer to my understanding of higher power? Is this deepening my relationship? Is this making my heart softer and more vulnerable so I can come to my higher power and feel closer? And sometimes we need to go through some stuff. We need to go through that dark night of the soul to get to that place. So yeah, that's my takeaway. Just getting out of those molds of like my spiritual life has to like look good and be perfect, and I have to be like acing the exams on spiritual life. It's like
No acing exams around here.
mm-mm.
And that's why we are here. That's why we're here, because we need, if it's just us in our mind, it's hard to remember those things. And that's why we're here. That's why we're with you and you're with us. That's what we got. If you want to get on our live Zoom audience, just go to Spirit Matters. Just Google search Spirit Matters Bhakti Center. you go bhakticenter.org, find it on our website. If you want to write to us and be in touch, email us at spiritmatters@bhakticenter.org. Thank you. There's other comments coming in here that we read and appreciative. There's other, yep, love that. We love you guys and we're grateful for all of you. We appreciate you, and we'll be back, God willing, tomorrow, same time, same place. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.